3 years ago, guys, I would have never told you to start a podcast because it wasn't searchable. You could not be found on Google. I think they started doing Google search in 2019, and it was a big deal because just like your blogs can get found in Google from search, podcasts, YouTube channels, and all of those can be found now as well. I started a podcast. I'm actually super excited and a little afraid because I'm just a little scared. I don't know how it's going to be received. I've never done this before. I did want to create this video to kind of walk you through the same process that I had to go through and get all the information for you and share it with you so that you guys don't have to do all of this legwork that I had to do. So I'm super excited about this. I want to share, all the tips on branding and planning and figuring out how you should set up your podcast, the equipment you need, the software you might want to use. All of those things are going to be right here in this video. I was trying to make it as comprehensive as possible for you guys because, us nonprofit founders, social entrepreneurs, we got a lot of stuff going on, okay? We got a lot of things to focus on. We wear a lot of different hats. So I wanted to make this as easy as possible for you guys. So let's jump in. If you are new to my channel, my name is Ashlee Tate, and I'm a brand strategist that teaches entrepreneurial strategies to social entrepreneurs and purpose-driven business owners so that they can go on and impact our world while also building an income and designing a life and business on purpose. That being said, if you're not new to my channel, well, welcome back, Remarkables. I'm so excited you guys are here. I want to jump right into this, and I'm going to try to speed through as quickly as I can so the video won't be too long. First, I want to start with why podcasting. The reason I chose podcasting is because just like all of us, we want to attract more donors, and podcasting is blowing up right now, okay? YouTube is great too, and I still love YouTube. As you guys know, that's how you're finding me on here. I absolutely love YouTube just for the connection piece, but podcasting is a whole nother beast. It's a whole different type of audience, and I think it's gonna be something great depending on what type of podcast you're looking to create and who you're trying to attract to your business. Podcasting is basically just the audio form of sharing your message. This is a great option for people who don't necessarily want to be on camera or who don't want to learn how to edit on camera and mess up and people can see it and all of the things. And if you mess up in audio form, it's not as bad because people are expecting this to be conversational. They're expecting to have the pauses and the ums and the back and forth if you have guests, banter. That's somewhat really what they like about podcasts when they're listening to them. And most times people are listening to podcasts while they're on their way to work or while they're doing other chores. So it's not something that they're like hyper focused on, but they're getting the information. So similar to an audiobook with a little more personality, okay? That's why I think podcasting is a great option for a lot of nonprofits who don't necessarily want to go into the video world just yet. And they feel like they would be more of a free form, free flow on this podcast platform. So now that we understand why you might want to have a podcast, I recorded my first podcast episode a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to try to release it in May, like early May, so it might already be out by now by the time this video comes out. One of the things that is probably my strongest suit is doing things before I'm actually ready. So I'm not really ready to put this podcast out there, but I think it's probably, if I don't do it now, then I will just procrastinate and I will think about it and I'll ruminate and I will overthink. And that's not what I'm about. So I'm not about that life. Nope, not at all. And I don't want you to be about that life either. So we're just gonna do this. I'm gonna show you all the things that I learned, and I'm gonna tell you the planning, the branding, the equipment you'll need, all of those types of things is what we're talking about. So first I wanna explain to you why I chose podcasting instead of starting a YouTube channel or a blog. So I started podcasting because I really wanted to have a way for listeners to learn and gain value from what I'm talking about. But I know the amount of time that it takes to do a YouTube channel, and I didn't want to add that type of task onto my plate. Editing is just not my forte. That's why I outsource it now. All of that is just not something that I wanted to get into, and I am much more of a conversational, casual person rather than a straight to the point, let me get all the information out in order, and I'm sure you guys can hear all of that. I'm very loquacious. I just talk a lot. And I've been told that my whole life. You got to just go with what you know, right? So if you know that you're somebody who's a little more conversational and casual and not as polished, and that won't come through on YouTube, podcasting is for you. Now, the difference with podcasting is that it doesn't really go off of an algorithm. It is more along the lines of you want people to subscribe to you, and you're gonna have to market it, and you're gonna have to get people to know about your podcast, right? As opposed to YouTube, where on YouTube, you create pretty consistently, and the YouTube algorithm will pick up what you're doing. They'll show it to certain people, and hopefully those people like your videos, and then they'll keep watching more. I've been on YouTube for a while now, and it's something that you have to really just commit to. And I think it's the same with podcasting. However, with podcasting, you can set your own schedule. And even though, yes, you can do that with YouTube, podcasting is a little more relaxed at this point. It's something that you have a little bit more control and creative license over, insofar as how often you're going to create your podcast. Now let's get into the branding side of the podcasting, because the branding side is kind of something that you need to spend a little bit of time on, and you kind of need to know who your audience is and all of that. So in our branding, we're looking at who your audience is, what you're planning on saying, the title, name, topic, all of those things we need to know, a little description, maybe a tagline. The next piece of this is all about branding and identifying your podcast for your audience. Identifying your audience is all about really identifying your true audience and identifying what they're looking at. So you may not have the same branding that you have for your nonprofit. You may not have the same branding that you had for your social enterprise, but for nonprofits and social enterprises, social entrepreneurs, you guys need to understand that there are two different audiences that you have. So your first audience is the audience that you actually help, and these are your clients that you might be doing your charitable work for. And then the second audience is the audience that you're trying to encourage to help support you in this venture, right? We have a charitable space, but we need donors, right? And so charity are the people that you help, and donors are the people that support your mission. I'm looking to create something that's gonna widen my net for supporters and let people know what my organization is and what it's all about. And the best way to do that is to be of value and create content that's gonna help them. And so the podcast is a great way to do that. YouTube is a great way to do that. Blogging is a great way to do that. However is best fitting for you. This is how other businesses, how they're able to get their information out and how they're able to make an income, all of these things. So I'm not telling you anything that is special for nonprofits. This is just a way to apply those strategies to your nonprofit or to your social enterprise. Make sure you're looking at which audience you're creating this for, okay? So if you have an audience that you're creating charitable stuff for, you wouldn't be creating that information for them, because that's why they already know about you, right? They already know how to get your services. Who they are, what they want, finding one person that you really want to speak to and things that they would want to know, and then putting that into your podcast. And you can apply this to your YouTube channel too if you decide to go that route. But you really want to focus in on what they want to know, give them that information, provide value, and then at the end of your podcast, maybe you can make an ask, or you can have that as a commercial inside of your podcast as a way of marketing your overall nonprofit. You have to figure out what those donors want to know in relation to your organization. Content is king in this economy, and if you don't know how to use content in today's economy, then you will have a hard time attracting the donors and the people that you want to support your organization. And that's a big part of what we work on in the Unleash Your Profit course. So if you're not in there, you may want to come in there and let me coach you, because you would have a blast. You'd also learn a lot about how to set up your nonprofit or your social enterprise as a entrepreneurial venture, as opposed to focusing on grants or focusing on trying to get people to donate. If that sounds like something you're interested in, please come join us there. You can find out all that information at ashleetate.com/work-with-me. Moving on from there, let's keep going into the branding space. So for your title of what you're thinking for your podcast, one of the things you might want to consider is thinking about what your podcast is all about. We want that in the title. So the name of my podcast, shameless plug here for sure, it's called Launching Better Parents, and it's all about keeping parents in the know with information that they need to know, information that would be helpful to them in raising their kids and just being better parents overall. It's very broad, but it's going to be focused and people will understand as they listen to the episodes what it's all about. So that is something that is very clear, right? We want people to know immediately, like, okay, that's about parenting. I don't need that, or I want it, or I want to know more. Yeah, I want to be kept in the know, or no, I don't want to be, whatever the case. It should be just as simple as that, because all they're going to have is your podcast art and your title, your logo, and then your description to decide if this is for you. You want to make sure it's very clear when they see it. My graphic did come from Fiverr. Very easy to work with. I can leave that seller down below as well so that you guys can use her as well. And what I did and what I would recommend that you do also is run it by a few people that you trust, run it by your board members, run it by people that you hope want to listen to it or that you've talked to about it before, and make sure it's something that you're comfortable with. Make sure it's something that you really like and you want to, share with the world, because this is yours and it's your baby and you're starting something new. So the next piece I want to talk about is what is podcasting. And podcasting essentially is just basically audio, recorded audio that anyone can listen to. And you can decide if you want to do this on a solo basis or as an interviewer, and you can set it up however you'd like. You can go back and forth. You have a lot of creative license. There's no specific way that people like to listen to audio, at least not yet. And so they just basically are choosing, do I like this person? Do I like the way they talk? Do I like what they're talking about? Do I like what they have to say on the subject? Those types of things. And then that's it. And that's essentially what an audio podcast is. Now, I want to add one more thing on this. There is also a different type of podcast, which is called a video podcast. And what that is basically someone recording themselves, recording the audio. Or that could mean that you are interviewing someone and there are two people on the screen. I'm sure you guys have seen both of these types of podcasts. And so basically you have two different types that you can choose from, but the base level of podcasting is audio podcasting, and it's a way for you to just listen to a conversation or someone talking and giving information without the camera. So of course YouTube is all camera based and requires a little bit of editing and a little bit of fine tuning along the way. That's not to say that the podcast has none of that, because there's a tiny bit of editing that you need to do, but not a ton. So moving on to the next one. So now I want to dive into how to actually plan your podcast, how you're going to set up your podcasting all come together, right? First thing you got to think about is, do you want to be a solo podcaster where you turn on the mic and it's just you talking and you're coming up with the ideas and then you talk? So similar to a talking head YouTube channel where I'm here, I'm giving you information, I'm giving you value, and you just wouldn't see my face, you would just be listening to my voice. So you can totally set something up like that where you're going to be giving value on your schedule. That's it. It's just going to be you. Or you can set it up as an interview style, which is what I'm doing. I'm setting mine up as an interview style where I will be interviewing people and bringing them on the show, and then we will just be on audio. Like I told you guys earlier, there's also a video podcast, so you can still create something like this, have your YouTube channel as well, basically get double duty out of both. But you have to remember that for your YouTube channel, you're gonna have to cut these down a little bit more. So if you have like an hour-long show and you're talking about something for 20 minutes, I would make it more into segments, 3 20-minute segments, but you're talking about 3 different things. And so then you are able to help YouTube place you where you need to go so that people can just listen to those 20 minutes and then move on. And then the next thing is to make sure that you understand which schedule works best for you. Now, your viewers and your listeners, they will adapt to whatever your schedule is, but it's nice for them to know that when they listen to your podcast, they'll know when the next episode should be coming out or when it's coming out. They'll be looking for your marketing from it and all of that. Now, a schedule that you might think about or consider is there are daily podcasts, there are weekly podcasts, there are bi-weekly podcasts twice a month, and then there are monthly podcasts. Some of those that go monthly are longer. They're generally about 30 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour. And any podcast can be that length of time, but you need to figure out, like if you're a solo podcaster, some people have 2 minutes, some people have 15 minutes, some people have 1 hour long podcast where it's just them talking and they're talking about a specific point and they're going through all of it. So you can have however you would like it to be, you can have that, okay? So since we're talking about me starting this podcast, I am actually going to do a monthly podcast, and it will be an interview style, and it'll obviously be for my donors or people that I want to attract as my donors. I'm starting that 1 month because I need to see the process of how long things take. And I've got, my YouTube channel, I run the nonprofit, I run my business, I do my coaching business. So I have kids, I'm married. There's a lot of things going on, okay? Now in your branding and planning, one of the things that you want to focus on is also creating your trailer and creating your description. So when you are creating your trailer, it's going to be something a little more to the point. Just sometimes you'll hear like a man on there and they'll have, launching better parents with Ashlee Tate, stuff parents need to know, or keeping parents in the know with experts and expert interviews and blah, 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 whatever. You can say something very short and quick because that's going to be the thing that comes up every single time someone wants to find out about your podcast or every time someone listens to your podcast. So you don't want it to be annoying. And if you don't think you can do a good job, again, Fiverr is a great place. You can just find somebody on there, give them the things you want them to say. And then every time you start your own podcast, like when you're starting it, you can just say, hey, you're on with Ashlee Tate and here with my guest so-and-so, and then you can add in something. Now, one of the things that you want to think about as far as editing, and I have done this with my first one, is on my first podcast, I just went straight into the podcast and I thought I will worry about the introduction later. I will just record another introduction and then I will add that into the beginning of podcast of who I am, who the guest is, give a little background, then jump into the actual podcast. So you can do that too. I think it's really helpful. I think it takes the pressure off because then you can just start your podcast and then you can go back and add in that other piece. Now, when it comes to your description, you want to make sure that your description is filled with keywords for people to find you. So I would say something about like talking about parenting topics to keep parents in the know. And I'm using the word parenting, I'm using the word parents, I'm using lots of different words that are going to help you understand as the reader when you're searching on Google that I'm the podcast for you, okay? So that's something that's really important to just to kind of keep in mind. You are trying to help people find you in search. 3 years ago, guys, I would have never told you to start a podcast because it wasn't searchable. You could not be found on Google. I think they started doing Google search in 2019, and it was a big deal because just like your blogs can get found in Google from search, podcasts, YouTube channels, and all of those can be found now as well. So that's just your description. But every time you go to write your show notes, that also now is SEO, and now you can be found specifically from your episodes. Basically, it's a way for every episode to be found and it's searchable. Okay, so next, I want to talk to you about your equipment. I was a little freaked out by the equipment piece because I am not techie at all, but for my first podcast, what I ended up doing is actually just using my phone. I have the iPhone 13. It's the most recent phone. I know that it has a good camera. I know that it has a good speaker. So I thought, I'm just gonna try it. Now, what I still did do is I still plugged in a little microphone that I had just as kind of a backup to it. We tested it out, and the way that I tested it out was through Fairlight, and you can absolutely download that. I'm pretty sure everything was free that I set up because it was last minute. I did a test with the guest and I just to make sure that the microphone was working. The microphone was in the middle of the two of us, and then I didn't know if I wanted to do a video or not, so I went ahead and recorded it with my camera. I don't think it came out so hot, but that's okay. That's besides the point. The point was to get the audio, and the audio came out fine. But let me just give you a couple more things I think you should have if you're going to start and you want to start it well. So the first thing you're going to need is a microphone, of course. Now, if you're doing it at a desk and you plan on doing more video or you're going to do it by yourself, you might also want to get a boom, which is just an arm that comes in with to hold your microphone. And then you have to get one of those little squishy things that go over the microphone to kind of the P's from sounding like you're spitting into the mic, or it's just a flat surface. And then you'll also need a pair of headphones. The reason we use the headphones, and we want those to kind of be plugged into your mic somehow, so even if they're just Apple headphones, the ones that hang and they have a little mic right here, even if your guest or you only have those, that's better than letting the audio reverberate back into it and hearing it back in, it'll reverberate. I think that's the only word I need to use. Now, as far as technology, which you guys know I'm not that great at. Technology, I would say If you plan on doing a lot of this on your phone, I would say to go with Fairwrite as a recording app that you can use on your phone, and you can edit through there and all of that. Buzzsprout is great because it sends it to every place and you can edit it, and it has just so many awesome features that come along with it. From all of my research, it is the best. Do you hear that? The best. That can be used right now in 2022 for sending out and distribution, editing, all of that in one place. So I would definitely suggest using Buzzsprout. For those of you who are thinking about doing interviews, and maybe you're gonna do interviews with people all around the country or in different places, I would definitely recommend Riverside. After a lot of the research, I found that Riverside.fm is the absolute best for a number of reasons. It records the audio on both their end and your end, and you get like 4 different audios if necessary, and you can record up to 8 people and have all of those audios split so that you can then edit individual audios for, you know, like if I mess up and everybody else was perfect, you can just clip my portion and edit that piece, but not having to cut out any of the conversation or anything else that's going on. So when it comes to creating basically your toolbox, I would say that if you ever think you're going to be with someone and they're going to be on your phone, I would get Fairwrite. I do believe that's free. Riverside FM for interviews and just having that access to the audio files in a different way and having it recorded on their computer, then sent to you, and then your computer and sent to you, so that you're not really having to deal with internet and internet issues if the connection isn't perfect. So you want some place that you can add your podcast and then it gets sent out to Spotify and Apple and all of the places. I know as nonprofits, we don't have a huge budget to use. And so I wanted to keep it as minimalist as possible for you guys. I think you can actually get this thing up and running for a relatively super low price. I haven't actually put out any money yet. I will put out $9 for Riverside for the first time I use it. I believe it's $9 or $12 per month. And then I'm gonna pay for the Buzzsprout subscription because I know that I'm gonna be doing this more often. And so at least monthly, and that to me is worth it. So I will have the links to all of those things down below if you're interested in getting started and you need any of that information. Now I wanna move into marketing. I know this is a long video, but I just wanna talk about it. With marketing, I really wanna talk about where should you have these things and how can you use them to get your message out there. I know a lot of you are on Instagram, that's great, but the most important place that you can put this podcast, outside of obviously the distribution channels, is on your website with your show notes. Now, this is a great way to get people to your website and to see what you do and what you're all about, start your blog, all of those things. This is a great way to do that for your nonprofit, because otherwise people aren't really thinking about what we're doing, right? They're not thinking about our nonprofit all the time. But when we create a new podcast, it's a way for them to have to go to your blog and listen to it if they didn't get it on their own, like if it didn't pop up in their feed or they didn't know about it, to go there and listen. Maybe you might want to put a portion of your podcast inside of your newsletter, directing them back to your website. Did you hear what I said? Directing them back to your website, not to the distribution channel. You want to direct them back to your website because all of that is good traffic for your website. It tells Google that you have a good website and people are enjoying coming back to it and they're doing something on there. So when you house your podcast on there, people just stay on there and they can listen if they want to while they're driving, or if they don't want to listen to your podcast on their website, then they at least now know they've been to your website, they've seen what it's all about, and then now they might go to a distribution channel and listen to it on their favorite distribution channel. The marketing side of that is really getting people to your website, helping them see a little bit more about what your organization does, why it works, why they might want to be a part of it, right? Because by that time, if they've ever listened to your podcast before, then they also know what your organization is all about already before they even get to your website. And then this is just a confirmation as to what they've already heard and what they may or may not know to supplement their information via your website. So get them to your website. That's a great way. The second way is to use Pinterest and create a Pinterest board for your podcast and your nonprofit. Have a way for people to find you randomly, right? If they're looking for whatever you talked about on your podcast, and then you make a Pinterest pin for it, then they might find it and they might end up at your website. So these are just ways to increase your chances, right, of being seen. And then the other way is to add a little clip of your podcast onto your Instagram. Now, what this does is it just gives you more content. You can break down little sections of your podcast and you can put it onto your Pinterest via Canva. Canva now will play your podcast in a graphic, and then you can add that graphic onto Instagram and people can listen to it for a short period of time. That is the most comprehensive podcasting startup video that I could come up with. And I really hope this helps you guys. There will be a ton of links down in the description box. You can also check out my blog if you'd like to on this podcast, Startup Comprehensive Guide. Again, thank you guys. If you stay till the end, you are a boss and I appreciate it. Thank you so much. If you stay till the end, I would love to know if you are seriously considering starting a podcast. And if you are, please come back and either join the tribe and let us know in the tribe what the name of your podcast is, or come back, leave it in the comment section for me so that I can check it out and come subscribe to you, because I definitely want to support all of you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Now get out there and unleash your something amazing. Bye, guys.